Whoever wins this race for the White House, they were still going to need to lead America through this historic pandemic. To discuss the challenges ahead, we bring in President Trump's former Homeland Security advisor and ABC contributor, Tom Bossert. Thanks so much for joining us, Tom.
Thanks, Lindsay.
So I was talking about it last night, a little Shakespeare. Now is the winter of our discontent. That's pretty much what we've been hearing from a lot of the top public health officials. What would you say is the COVID-19 trajectory as we head into winter?
Well, I'll give you a better one. This seems to be a willful suspension of disbelief, and it's really dangerous. What we're seeing right now is something that's broken out of regional growth, and it's become a national epidemic again, and it's going to become very difficult, if not impossible, for us to contain it. Remember, the mistake we made in February was that we waited so long that we couldn't apply targeted regional efforts to try to contain this spread and to slow it, and we had to implement a national blanket shutdown. That's what this president did. And now we're at a point where I fear that we'll have no other choice. We have to act quickly now in order to reduce the odds of a national blanket shutdown, not to ensure one. And the numbers now, and you just said some of them, look at the ICU admissions, look at the hospital admissions. This is tragic. And regardless of the outcome of the election, this current president, President Trump's going to have to deal with this and reckon with these numbers, because his term does not end until January 20th at noon.
And how is the COVID response impacted by this election and going forward, a potential transition of power?
So the election has affected it in a couple of ways. I think the election has painted this false narrative that it was either a national shutdown or not. Of course, we had a third alternative all along, and we should now be implementing it. We should have been implementing it several weeks ago, and it's a targeted, tailored, nationalized or nationally coordinated effort, but locally implemented with resources to help the people that face temporary and short shutdowns, with additional help coming from federal resources, but also from other states. This is a major disaster declared in all 50 states simultaneously, and we're not acting that way. We're acting as if it's a local and state responsibility and not a joint collective one. So that was the first thing. The second thing the election did is it took our eyes off the ball. I think all of us are guilty a little bit of that, but the president and leadership teams certainly are guilty of that. And then, thirdly, how does the transition affect us, not just the election? The transition is going to affect us because it's delayed. Whatever the election results are, we're going to have a new president and vice president take office January 20th. That's how our system works. It's constitutionally enshrined. If this turns the way the trend goes right now, that Vice President Biden wins, he's not going to have many options by January 20th in front of him. And we're not going to have a really viably distributed vaccine in time to arrest this with a pharmaceutical intervention. So it's time to step up the behavioral interventions. There's really no other alternative.
Joe Biden has said that he would impose a national mask mandate where he can if he becomes president. How would something like that work, and is that an approach that you'd recommend?
You know, the word I really caution him to be careful in using is mandate. So we all agree, and he has a really strong bully pulpit to help promote this, that universal mask wearing is important. That should be our national collective objective. We should view that as our responsibility. When he talks about it in terms of a mandate from Washington, D.C., he'll have to be careful, especially because if he gets elected, I don't want to get in front of any news here, but if he gets elected to the presidency, so many people in red states that didn't vote for him will be tempted to not listen to anything that he seeks to compel them to do. Any kind of compulsory law tends to get people who are distrustful of government authority to get their back up and ultimately not do it in some form of mild or quiet protest. So I'd like him to use his bully pulpit to encourage a universal adoption of mask wearing, and then to help bring the whole country together, governors and mayors, for them to mandate it and for them to enforce it. If you have one or two outliers, that's okay. You don't want to put too much gasoline on an already sensitive situation.
And lastly, how big of a game changer would you say is a vaccine, and what more would still be needed to be done at that point from a disaster relief standpoint?
Yeah, you know, it's a game changer, but it's not an overnight game changer. So the vaccine, let's say we get a good one that's 60% effective. That means if every single man, woman, and child in the country were to take it, and the one we're going to get in this country is probably going to be a 2-shot process. You get a shot, you wait, then you get a second shot they call a booster. If 60% of the people that get it produce the immunoresponse against this virus that we hope for, that's a really good vaccine. That's really good compared to what you expect a flu vaccine to be every year. So think about that. Every single person in this country could take that vaccine properly, and there'd still be 40% of the population vulnerable. So we have to make sure we control our expectations. It won't happen overnight. We want a large adoption rate. We want people to believe it's safe to take this. We don't want any headlines to misread or conflate the scenario. If it's an effective and safe vaccine, but somebody takes it and then gets sick and, God forbid, passes away anyway, we don't want them to conflate this and say, well, I got sick or my person or my friend got sick and died because of the vaccine. No, that's a safety issue. It can still be an efficacy issue. So we're going to have to do a lot of messaging. We're going to have to be a little patient. And I would anticipate vaccine distribution and adoption through the country all through next spring, summer, and into the fall. And that's really a long time away if you think about it. We are right now reporting, as you introed to this segment, 110,000 new cases a day. And if we continue at that pace all through the winter, we can't just rely on a magical pharmaceutical intervention.
Tom, just want to put you on the spot for a moment, if I can. I think it would be helpful for our viewers. What would it take for you personally to take this vaccine or recommend it to your families? What kind of data would you have to see?
Well, the FDA has been very transparent about their safety and their efficacy standards and the thresholds that they'll permit. I'm comfortable with both their standards and their thresholds and the procedures that they're putting in place. As I said, I'm a little bit more worried about the misunderstandings around efficacy than I am about safety. I'm convinced that the safety of the vaccine that ultimately hits the United States markets will be very, very high quality and not pose a risk to my life. It might not necessarily make me immune to the virus, but that's worth trying, and there's absolutely no hesitation in my voice. When that FDA approval comes out, I'll be in line when appropriate, because there are others who are more frail and more deserving than me. But when they tell me I'm in the right line, in the right place, I'll take that vaccine.
Really helpful. Tom Bossert, thanks so much, as always, for your insights.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.